Welcome to another episode of the Battlefields Bourbon Podcast. I'm Jack, joined as always by my co-host Elijah, and our honorary, reoccurring guest co-host, Mr. Aaron Siever. Aaron Civil War Travels is joined with us as well for this special episode. We can't seem to get rid of him. He just keeps showing up when we record. So
basically,
I told you what would happen if you gave me bourbon.
I know, yeah. So Aaron is back, obviously, with us, and we're excited for this episode. We're kind of bouncing off what we did to start the new year and to roll into one of the major campaigns that comes through the Shenandoah Valley out of Winchester. But a lot of what takes place here does not take place in the Shenandoah Valley. So if any of you listeners are like, man, you guys are so biased talking about the Valley stuff all the time. Yes, of course we are. But what we're talking about today, the Romney Expedition or the Romney Expedition or the Romney Campaign, whatever you want to call it, majority of this, like 95% of this, takes place outside of the Shenandoah Valley. So take that for what it is. But we'll get into that here in a second. First off, let's get something in our glasses. My glass is looking empty, Elijah. We've got an amazing bourbon. Not amazing in taste, haven't tasted it yet, but a very exciting bourbon, I should say, on the agenda for this episode. So Elijah, tell us what we're sipping on today.
So we've got Traveler Whiskey from Buffalo Trace Distillery. This one is a pretty much brand new 2024 release from the distillery. It's a collaboration with Chris Stapleton. If you know that name, country music star. I think we're all pretty big Stapleton fans here. So that's cool to have that bottle here, as well as, being a Buffalo Trace product. We definitely don't shy away from those when we can get them. This one actually is not bourbon. Apparently, I mean,
what?
The label just says, yeah, I know we're deviating from the course here. Just says Traveler Whiskey, blend number 40. So it's a blended whiskey. I'm imagining it's probably something bourbon, rye, but neither one of them meets the 51% threshold to be one or the other. I think the story behind it is that they had tried like 50 some odd recipes, and they agreed on number 40 being the best of them. Not sure if Mr. Stapleton himself tried any of this stuff.
I'm sure he had to put his name on it.
Allegedly, he's been sober for a few years now.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait, so we're drinking a sober man's whiskey.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
Cool.
That is kind of cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, but we can
We'll take your pours, Chris.
Yeah.
That's a good pop.
That is
Good pop.
It smells interesting.
What did we do last episode? Was it the Old Forester?
Yeah.
Did that was a screw off or no? That was
a cork.
Wasn't that good of a pop though? I thought.
No, that one was good.
Okay.
It sounded better on the recording than it did in person, I think. But hey, it works.
So did you give a mash bill with this?
Being a Buffalo Trace product,
they
they're not
don't
going to tell you. Yeah, they're not going to tell you anything like
that.
that. It's 90 proof, so that's pretty much all I know is that it's a blended whiskey at 90 proof. Harlan Wheatley, the master distiller at Buffalo Trace, and Chris Stapleton are apparently the masterminds behind this. They kind of collaborated and narrowed down this blend out of all the ones that they tried. It's very light in color.
Yeah, I was going to say the color.
It is very, very light.
Almost like a light caramel looking color.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice little golden color to it. But
amber.
I would imagine that that's probably a sign that it's not aged for very long, whatever they did blend it with. Not that that's an issue, because there's some young stuff that's tasty out there. But
this bottle too is pretty neat. It's very old school in bottle shape, like very 19th century style glass bottle shape.
Little tax stamps on the side of the label.
Tax stamps on the side, and then if you'll see it, I guess you'll see it in the image, right, that we post for the pour profile.
Yeah, you'll see that.
So you'll see the map.
Back of the label.
Yeah, the back of the back of the back label, which you see through the front of the bottle, is an old map. I'm assuming of Kentucky. You see Lexington there, so that's a really cool map. It's kind of like the theme of our background images. It's got those old school maps. So, awesome, cool bottle.
Yeah,
bottle.
It's very cool.
I know what it is that just hit me on this one, because as soon as I pop the bottle, I'm like, this thing smells. I don't want to say it smells weird, but it smells almost like Swedish fish. Do you get that? Like a candy kind of gummy
Definitely
note there. It's odd, but it's
definitely sweet.
Yeah, it's very, very sweet.
We're sipping. Oh, Elijah.
I'm just... Calm down. Just went down the wrong hole.
That was the first cough we've had
Yes, it was.
as a sip.
You just went down the wrong hole.
Okay.
Let's not overreact.
I mean,
Isn't there only one in the throat?
I don't know.
Well,
I'm not a
and
doctor.
I'm just saying that, there was an episode where I just downed the whole thing. I didn't cough.
That's true.
So, yeah.
God, yeah.
It's all good.
No, this
Got a lot of
is
spice to it.
Yeah.
It almost tickles the tongue.
But the burn doesn't last long.
Yeah,
the
no,
burn is quick.
very sweet. I get more of that candy taste in the I get more of that candy in the taste than I would the smell actually. For me the smell was just like, oh, it smells like whiskey.
Yeah.
Like nothing too crazy off of it. But the taste, something I would sip on. It's pretty good.
I definitely got the what you were talking about, Elijah, the sweet kind of gummy candy smell. Like the Swedish Fish is a good.
Yeah. When
good,
you taste it though, it definitely doesn't translate to the palate. However,
It's a nice sipper.
yeah, that little cinnamon spice kind of kick to it is nice. Picked a good time of year to release that. I would say wintertime's probably a good one for that.
That's good 90 proof.
Yeah,
Like, that's
at
really
90,
good.
that's got some.
This seems like one you can put into something too. Like you put it into some coffee or something. Give coffee a little extra kick.
I've never really mixed coffee and whiskey.
Don't sniff my coffee tomorrow at work. Nah,
A little early.
It's a very good combination, coffee and whiskey.
Yeah, no, I like that for sure. But yeah, that is Traveler Whiskey from Buffalo Trace Distillery. MSRP on that one's about $40.
Which is not bad.
No, not at all. It's an affordable bottle, so I appreciate
It's a
that
famous
they,
person whiskey.
Yeah, so usually those celebrity brands will tend to bring a higher price. So I'm glad that they went with the blue-collar pricing here.
Yeah, I mean, would you message me this week when I asked you the price? You were like, you said, Stapleson's looking out for the blue-collar folk.
Exactly.
No, it's like, this is something I would definitely like. Like, it's, I don't know, we haven't tried many other of, like, celebrity-endorsed whiskeys, but this would be a cool one to have, I think, especially since it's a Buffalo Trace product.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
for
good.
sure.
That's
And
good.
I think that this one will be something that you won't see where people will try to flip it on secondary markets
No,
or
because there's probably an abundance
price
of
gouge it. Yeah, I mean, it's been in the Buffalo Trace gift shop in quantity every single day, already being distributed nationwide, that kind of thing. I even saw on his Instagram he was down in Destin, Florida, signing some bottles in a store and just like tucking them away on the shelf. Could you imagine walking into a store and just
Picking up one of
picking up
those?
an autographed bottle?
So are they at ABC stores in Virginia?
Virginia, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have these yet. This I got in West Virginia. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, Virginia's behind the
On everything,
behind
really.
it. Yep, once again.
Yeah.
We won't
More
go
Virginia
there.
ABC.
Yeah, we won't go there. But yeah, they're lacking once more.
Especially with like all the bourbons I've tried since July, since the first episode. Going into ABC stores now is very anticlimactic for me because I walk in and I'm like, there's Bowman, there's George Remus, and it's like, there's Clyde May, all the ones we've tried that are like would spark my interest or like that caught my eye the first time I saw them, and now it's like
The regular.
there they are,
shelf
like
items,
nothing's
yeah.
changed.
That's part of the thrill of the hunt with bourbon is just never knowing what you'll see or what you might find elsewhere, like the allocated, hard to find stuff, the limited releases, that kind of thing. But there are some great items sitting on the shelf, as we've proven to
That's
our
true,
listeners.
yeah.
Yes.
Like you said,
Yeah,
Remus and
all those things.
and Clyde
Remus was like
Mays
at
and
a
Bowman.
discount
Yeah,
last week or something when I was in there, and I was like, if I didn't have that same bottle we had, I would buy another one because it was like $10 off or something. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's a pretty good deal.
yeah. I mean, and that's one thing to remind the listeners too is that not everything that's good is hard to get. I mean, you can.
true.
There's plenty of great options that just
Like very old Barton.
sit on the shelf.
I'm telling you, it's
still
good.
have not tried it, but I will take your word for it.
Yeah.
I've heard it from a lot of people that it's good. I just need to get with the times, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you too about Traveler. When you first said that to me, I was like, how exciting. The name of Jackson's horse is, Aaron just dropped his head down. The name of Jackson's horse is the bourbon we're drinking and talking about at Jackson campaign. That's just not the, I know. But I got like the 0.5 seconds I thought it was, because there's really like maybe a handful of horses you know the names to and who they belong to. So I was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh, yeah, not.
I can always bring this whiskey back for an episode.
Just for those that may not know, Little Sorrel is Jackson's horse.
Little Sorrel. Well, I was trying to picture.
Traveler is Lee.
I was trying to picture the grave of Traveler.
Yeah.
And it's been a while since I've seen it, but I was like, what did the grave say? I didn't know. And I know like Rienzi is Sheridan's, later Winchester. That's about it. Those are the only horses I know. Yeah.
You have Cincinnati.
Whose is that?
I think that's Grant's.
That's kind of cool.
Cool name.
Well, I know like the colors of some horses. Like I feel like Ashby had like a.
This is black, wasn't it?
Yeah, or it was white, but I think it was black. Now Aaron's looking it up.
So we got to fact check this. I'm pretty sure it was an all black one. Either all black or all white. It was nothing in between.
Well, I remember I had like an action figure of Lee's horse when I was a kid.
They make
like
those?
They had like the little toy soldiers you could like set up and play war with, Civil War version.
Oh yeah.
And they had Lee, and they did Traveler kind of to a T, where he had like spots on his rear end, and he was white or kind of grayish was his color. Mm-hmm. I always remember. I think I still have those toys. We should put them in an episode picture set.
Little action figures.
We should play with them.
Yeah, we should.
Speaking of traveling,
Ashby's white horse was named Tom Telegraph.
I knew that, but I didn't.
White horse, never mind.
I've heard that before.
Speaking of Chris Stapleton, white horse, you know.
Oh.
Yeah, huh? Man, all these connections and everything this episode. But yeah, speaking of traveling.
I thought of another connection today too, but I don't remember it now. I was like, I can tie it in with this.
If it comes back to you, you can always
use it.
Shout it out.
Over. Yeah. But the Romney expedition. So this is one Aaron and I have definitely talked about over the years a lot. It's a cool one. It's for the sake of the podcast, it's a non-valley campaign. So get off our backs. We're going western. We're going west with this one.
By just a few miles.
Over the mountain, we're going west. But this is a cool topic. One we were excited to do close to the anniversary of it. Takes place, it depends who you ask. But the campaign itself gets pretty heavy in January of 62.
Yep, January 1.
So that's why we thought it would be a good January episode. Good way to talk about something that takes place in the wintertime, as we're sitting here in the wintertime. January 1, Aaron said.
That's when the official Romney expedition.
But let's back that up a little bit, because what episode was this? When maybe it was our Port Republic Cross Keys Harrisonburg one, where we were kind of discussing how
when the Valley campaign
does start, because that's so heavily debated. We say January 1.
Well,
sometimes.
Actually, a lot of times you and I, we actually say November 1 because Jackson gets to the Valley. He's a son
early
of the
November.
Valley, October 30th. Gets to the Valley November 1 or November 5th, and he's
4th.
Oh, is it the 4th?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say the 4th or 5th, but he's off. He hits the ground running.
Yeah, so that's kind of where the dilemma is. Depends who you talk to about it. If we're having fun, like we are right now, sipping some Chris Stapleton Traveler, we're going to say it starts when Jackson, it's fun to say because Jackson is on the move starting November, early November 1861. He arrives in Winchester, and he's ready to go.
Yeah, I think you can totally articulate the campaign starts there.
Yeah.
As soon as he gets there, he starts he calls the militia out. He gets them going, and he calls for his Stonewall Brigade, and he's trying to get reinforcements right away.
Yeah, I remember reading somewhere that like his pie in the sky goal was to like cross the Potomac, head into Pennsylvania, live off the land, get to Philadelphia, and then backtrack northwest to like Lake Erie. And then like turn us back to the lake and set up a front there. which is crazy because it's like we're
What
like
an
6
idea.
months into the war,
Yeah.
and this is what he's going for. So I could be totally wrong on that, but I definitely remember hearing or reading this, which is crazy. Just a crazy thing. But that, if you're a historian of the war, a historian of Jackson, it just sets the tone of what this commander is going to be like in the war. So yeah, there's a great dispatch from Davis, President Davis. He writes on November, in November of '61, proposing an expedition to Romney in Western Virginia. It was decided to adopt his proposition, endorsed by the commander of the War Department, and to ensure success, though not recommended in the endorsement in his old brigade, then in the Confederate Army of the Potomac, was selected as a part of the command with which he was to make the campaign.
So this is Jackson to Davis, correct?
This is
Or is that
Davis
to the War Department?
to the War Department.
Ah, okay. So after he's received that.
Yeah. I think when Jackson arrives to Winchester in November, he's got, it's not his full force.
No.
I think, and he doesn't have his Stonewall Brigade.
Stonewall
He
Brigade's not
leaves
here yet.
the Stonewall Brigade behind.
I think he's roughly around 3,000 men.
Yeah, I had it.
3,000 to 4,000 maybe. Because he's going to call out the militia.
So he's got 1,400 infantry, 225 cavalry, and this is all put into 3 brigades, and this is what's in
And
Winchester.
that's before he calls out the militia.
Yeah, this is so before like Ashby
As
would
soon
arrive.
as he arrives.
Yeah, he sees the state of his troops, and he's like, I need everybody to report to Winchester because,
And his goal for the expedition was 15,000, right? And he ended up with 11.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
11,000.
ended up 15 to 16,000, ends up with around 11.
Leaves town with 9. Left 2,000 to guard town.
And by this
at
point,
that point,
is the Stonewall Brigade in Winchester?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, before he starts his the Stonewall Brigade is dispatched out to him.
Okay.
So
But before we get to the accumulation of that force, he does request militia to come from the southern end of the Shenandoah Valley, Western Virginia, any troops that are available out there. Most of those Confederates are under the command of Robert E. Lee, in command of the Kanawha River Valley area of Western Virginia, today West Virginia. So some of these troops are going to arrive to Jackson, though, in Winchester, and Jackson is ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
And he, in order to start this big pie in the sky idea that we talked about, he knows the Potomac River's there. He knows the importance of the Potomac River, the C&O Canal, and what is the C&O Canal heavily used for? Well, the distribution of coal from Cumberland, Maryland, so just up river from
you're close to Williamsport.
Yeah, so kind of on the western end of the Potomac River, they put coal on there, and that coal goes straight to Washington, D.C., and that, fuels the town per se. So Jackson knows that's a target. Dam number 5 is the one he chooses to attack and disrupt operations of the C&O Canal.
Great Aaron Civil War Travels video on that.
Maybe we'll link it. We say we'll link your videos. We never do. That's okay, though. So dam number 5 is the objective. He heads up. I think he sends a detachment of troops up there first.
Yes.
They don't succeed.
December 6th.
So then around December. Yeah, go through that.
When they go up December 6th, he sends a small force there to blow up the dam. And as they get there, it's cold. Things aren't working out well for them, and Union troops arrive, and actually they skirmish back and forth quite a bit. They'll try from, I believe it's the 6th to the 8th, somewhere around there, maybe the 9th, to continuously try to get in there and blow up this dam, and it doesn't work. Jackson, who a lot of times we see where Jackson will say the subordinate didn't do enough. I believe the subordinate that's up there is Paxton, and he will actually say, because this effort was done on a Sunday, that it didn't have divine intervention, and that's why it didn't work.
Fair enough.
Which which if you've studied Jackson, you know that's another one of his things. But they will come right back up there, and they actually fight there and attempt to disrupt everything till December 21st of 1861. And I think you go back just a little. He gets there beginning of November, and in a month, he's moving.
Yeah.
Where else in the Confederacy, or really even the Union, where else are armies really moving?
At this point in the war.
At this point in the war, there's really nothing going on except for Jackson.
Yeah, everybody else is in winter camps and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like they're just
Jackson's like, let's go. Let's figure something out.
And I think before the dam, I mean, Federals thought Romney was going to be a focus anyways.
Yeah.
So
As it's reinforced, I think.
yeah, I think
beforehand.
some
when
earthworks on the high grounds and everything.
when we're trying to think when the Confederates were pushed out of Romney. It was attacked by Federals on September 23rd.
So it's either September or October.
The defenders fully fled the area in October. So yeah, they figured Romney was trying to get taken back, but Jackson faints and goes to dam number 5, disrupts that. I think after that first attempt's made there, around December 17th, he goes back and personally leads some of this destruction of the dam.
Yeah,
They destroy the dam
to an extent.
to an extent where it's inoperable.
Not for long.
But as Jackson's like, all right, we got it. Let's bounce on like the 21st of December. The Federals in like a day fix the dam, and this canal's back in operation. Funny little Stonewall story. Supposedly that on the march back to Winchester, the Winchester area from the area of Dam River 5 on the Potomac, Jackson, being a fruit guy, loves fruits, climbs a persimmon tree. He has no problem getting up there and starts eating as the troops are marching by, and he's eating persimmons. And all of a sudden, the issue comes to be that he can't get back down, and he struggles. And people are getting a good laugh out of it. Ultimately, they take some fence rails and form like a little, ladder or slide for him to get back down. But it's a little funny Jackson story because you just try to picture the guy stuck in a tree. He's probably
Your commanding general.
He's looking like a beast up there, I'm sure, like reviewing his troops in a way, eating on some fruit, and then he's like, how am I getting down from here? So that's dam number 5. That's, gets us to about mid-December. As we get closer to January 1's really when it takes off.
Now, you have William Loring has started toward Jackson. I believe it's Christmas Day when his first units start to arrive in Winchester with Jackson. So that's what boosts Jackson's numbers up.
The old Stonewall Brigade and, Loring's division.
Oh, one-arm Willie.
Arrive. Christmas of 1861. And then he'll keep beefing up his other militia, his other cavalry. This is when you'll get Turner Ashby's arrival from 7th Virginia Cav.
Yes.
And he'll use Ashby as the initial force to do that first attempt on dam number 5. So in total, by the 1st of January of 1862, Jackson's got 11,000, like we said, of his 15 that he was hoping for. January 1, he'll step off from Winchester, heading west on... Okay, this is debated. Either the Pewtown Road.
That's what
I know.
Most everything.
Or
hear me out.
Hear me out. He goes out the Romney Road to what would be today North Hayfield Road, and takes North Hayfield Road from the Romney Road. So from Route 50 to the North Hayfield Road, goes north. So you turn right off of the Romney Road, gets on this northern road. That road takes you straight into what was known as Pewtown, but Gainsboro. And then we know this part. This is all true. So whether he came on Route 50, which just runs parallel with 522 or the North Frederick Pike, either way, he ends up in Gainsboro or Pewtown that night and camps the night of the 1st in Pewtown or Gainsboro. Am I wrong?
I've never read one way or the other, so I can't tell you, to be
Okay.
honest with you. I've never
Well,
seen it.
everyone says that he had camps and stuff up along Little North Mountain, like near Albin and stuff, on North Frederick Pike.
There is the one, yeah.
So, but the most recent account I read was where he takes Route 50 or the Romney Road, and he goes out and then turns north, and then that road obviously would dump you straight into Gainsboro.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in Pewtown.
Nonetheless,
He
whatever
ends up in the
road
same
they
place.
take, the weather was really nice that morning. Like really, really nice. Like
they left all their
60s.
they were like dropping their blankets, dropping their jackets.
Now, with that, there's something said about that. I can't remember who writes it, but it's one thing for Loring's guys to be doing that. It's an entirely different thing for Jackson's men to be doing that.
I believe it was mentioned in both Defend the Valley and Company H.
Yeah, and
I think both those books.
It's in Cousin's book, and I think Tanner's too. You got to think these guys, Jackson's guys, have been with Jackson. They know how he operates. They know how Virginia weather is. We know how Virginia weather is.
Yeah.
Loring's guys, I can give them credit for, hey, it's 60 degrees. We're going to take our overcoats off, put them in the train, or put them in the wagons. But Jackson's guys, that's kind of a foolhardy thing. They just kind of followed suit.
I'm pretty sure one of the accounts that I had read, they left their coats in camp.
Yeah.
That here in Winchester, as they marched out, some of them didn't even throw them in the wagons. They just
think
left them
some
here.
of them-
Yeah, a
in the
lot of it
wagons,
was
some
left
of them
behind because by the time they arrive in the area of Gainsboro to camp, on the night of the 1st, a massive winter storm front arrives.
Which is crazy because you're not that far away. Why don't you just turn around or send someone for the wagons to bring your uniforms?
Well, it's not that far away in our terms, but I've driven 522 a lot, and I know you drive it a lot, Elijah.
Hilly walk. Or hilly
And
drive.
try to picture like if you were walking the entire thing, because you go over that first hill at Albin, then you keep going, and then you got to go over that second hill, which is the one just before like the middle school and elementary school, and then you go back down, and then you're in Gainsboro. So it's 2 massive hills.
all covered in snow and ice.
Snow and
Good
ice
luck.
at that point.
Yeah. So and the road's not 4
Yeah.
lanes paved, baby.
It's a mud, a mud path.
it's a mud path.
It turns into an ice skating rink.
Exactly. So, what's that little sled? What do they call it? The Olympic sport?
Oh, the bobsled.
Bobsled. It's because the Pewtown
Literally.
Road was, hugging the sides of those hills. It was not really where it is today.
Yeah.
So it's like a bobsled track.
Yeah.
Very narrow, very on the side of a mountain.
Yeah, I think they talk about the guys in front having the benefit because they're smashing all the snow down. The guys at the back, they're on that
on the
bobsled trail.
It's like what we've been walking on around the valley here recently.
Yeah.
After the snow that we just got was all that compacted, and now it's ice. It's all melting today, but good. So they get out there and they're like, holy crap, it's cold and we don't have our stuff. And that really just sets the tone for what this campaign is going to be like. These guys are miserable that night. They're wanting their coats. They're wanting their jackets. It's just not a good way to start out this new year of Civil War.
Not only is it snowing and sleeting, it's also extremely windy.
Yeah.
It's very cold.
Well, this all ends up catching up to them later on in the campaign when they end up sending a bunch of troops back to Winchester because of illness.
Yeah.
Like at Camp Mud, we'll get to that in a minute. I think on the Civil War Trail sign there, they had said that of like a few, I don't want to say 1,000, but it was a pretty high number of troops that got sent back to Winchester due to illness.
I think it's like 1,200 or something.
Yeah,
It's a good amount.
I mean, of what you've got, and you're already short of what you expected to begin the campaign with. You can't lose that many soldiers. I mean, every little bit counts. So they ended up paying for leaving their uniforms behind.
Big time.
Oh, yeah. There's a great quote here from a Confederate officer that says, "The road was almost an uninterrupted sheet of ice, rendering it almost impossible for man or beast to travel, while by moonlight the beards of the men matted with ice glistened like crystals." So
I know.
And just to update the numbers, according to this, it says he left with a force about 9,000, leaving 2,000 to guard. So
Yeah, that's what Elijah was saying earlier. Is about 2,000 in the town to guard.
I know in Defend the Valley they had mentioned, I think it was Robert Barton talked about it, on the campaign, somewhere along the way, I don't even know where, I would love to find out where, they had spilled a wagon due to the road conditions. They were on like a steep embankment. A wagon tipped and then just rolled down this embankment, and they lost like cases and cases of ammunition and supplies and everything. So in theory, that case of ammunition is still there. If it's not, it's not covered by, a new road or house or whatever. But
I'm glad you brought that up, because there's another factor that it seems small and gets overlooked. Jackson has a great quartermaster, and I cannot recall his name right off the top of my head, but he is not available during this campaign. His assistant is not available during this campaign. So there's a third guy, and I think he's a captain, and he is just kind of out of his league trying to do this campaign with these wagons over this icy mountain, and just doesn't have the forethought, because, he's the third guy in line. He knows the job, but he hasn't had to perform it. So that's another little factor there in this campaign. It kind of puts a little nail in the coffin there.
And something else to consider too, if you're getting down to like a really technical standpoint, at this point in the existence of the Confederacy, a lot of their arsenals have not been producing the ammunition that you'll see later in the war. So right now, Jackson's men are largely equipped with their smoothbore muskets and stuff like that. So when you think about, the staple round of ammunition for the Confederacy, people in the metal detecting community think of like the Gardner bullet, which at that point had not even begun manufacturing in Richmond. So they are down, a significant number of supplies, at least in terms of the ammunition that they have available to them at this point in the war. You're operating just on smoothbore muskets with the ammunition that you can get, what they would have captured from Harper's Ferry, that kind of thing. So the fact that they're losing stuff like this, they don't have the logistical means to acquire what they need for this campaign, is definitely not helping them, because they're not getting any help from Richmond in terms of what the arsenals will soon produce, just not yet. But I guess that's also on Jackson for having the idea to start a campaign in the middle of the winter.
one saving grace for them is what the Union Army is equipped with, which are old Belgium rifles that are jamming and blowing up and everything. So they're not good.
Equally as disadvantaged in their own right.
Equally bad. I think the Union troops will actually throw them down. The Confederates won't even take them. They're worse than the smoothbores. So that should say something about those. And I don't know if you've seen, well, I'm sure you've seen a 69 caliber Prussian bullet. They're huge. So if you got 4 or 5 of those jammed in your gun, it's no wonder it explodes.
Yeah, that will definitely do it. That's an interesting little bullet too. We'll have to post a picture of one of those.
Yeah, they're big.
So where is Jackson headed? You may ask. Because you're like, Romney expedition, where are you going, big guy?
What are these guys yapping about?
And it's like, you're not on the Romney road, but you may have been, and now you're not. No. His objective is Bath, which sounds like a pleasant place, but sadly it does not exist today as Bath. It's now known as Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. I don't know why they switched the name. That'd be an interesting story to tell, because I think it'd be cool to say, I'm going to Bath.
I don't know, Berkeley Springs sounds inviting.
I guess.
Sounds a lot bougier than the place actually is.
It's a cute little West Virginia town.
It is. It is. I won't disrespect
and
it
there's,
too hard.
it's right on the edge of that big mountain there. And
the resort there is nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. Well, George Washington, quote unquote, took a bath in the hot spring. I think that's there. And that's why the town became known as Bath. Also, there's the town in England that's Bath. Mm-hmm. But I don't know why. I'm trying to find where it's switched to. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I was like, it's not coming up. Well, it might be Civil War. But why? So he's headed north. He's headed to Bath, Aaron.
So, yeah, he's headed to Bath. And like you just said, why? Well, there's a Union force in Bath. Those troops are under Is it Lander? No, Lander's in Hancock. There are Union troops there, and that's going to be on his flank and rear. Actually, if he goes up to Romney, he's going to be exposed to those troops and attack. So he's got to attack Bath and drive that unit out, and he's going to come up with a plan to use the militia to kind of go around, kind of to the south and up into Bath.
Loring.
And then
No, Loring's in Romney.
Yeah, he'll use Loring's troops to attack straight through.
I'm trying to figure out who
It was Rosecrans, wasn't it? Or am I thinking of him in a different sense?
Rosecrans is in the area. He is a little bit farther west, though. But that is one of the units, one of the armies that Jackson is keeping an eye on. Some of those lead elements are coming down. But yeah, he has to attack Bath. If he doesn't, then he's got troops, in his rear, and you can't have that obviously if you're making a demonstration against another town. He doesn't have the force to kind of split as he will in the valley later on. So
yeah, this is the federal force that's there. Jackson will utilize the terrain a lot, send him around the mountains on different roads as he's headed through northern Frederick County into Morgan County.
Which I think, if I remember correctly, it's Washington also uses that same type of terrain at Bath during, I guess it's the French and Indian War. He uses the same tactic that Jackson will actually use because it's the best tactic to use.
Yeah, but some of the federal forces that are there is the 84th Pennsylvania, the 110th Pennsylvania, the 39th Illinois, and the 13th Indiana, and the 4th U.S. Artillery will be placed up on Warm Springs Mountain, which runs to the southwest of the town in a way. And Jackson will send some troops on the western side of that mountain to use it as some coverage.
I believe that's the militia. It's kind of
the
south
Virginia
and then
militia,
the west.
yeah. But I think some of them get lost as they're headed up there. There's a lot of confusion.
There's also a small force on that other side of the mountain that they run into and they skirmish, and then there's felled trees and things like that. So it takes them longer to get there.
Yeah, ultimately Jackson, and this is January 4th, Jackson will take over control of the town of Bath and force the Federals basically to the Potomac River, close to, and they'll have to cross Sir John's Run, which is a run up there, using some of the train infrastructure that's up along the Potomac. Some will be able to cross the Potomac, some will not. Some will get trapped because of the obstacles that are there, because of the frozen water bodies, things like that. But federal forces disperse from there, which kind of, so Bath's done. Check that off the list.
All the way to Hancock.
Hancock, which will lead us into the Battle of Hancock. Yeah, like the next day after January 4th, there's the Battle of Hancock, which is, a pretty uneventful, but it's more of a, I guess, recognized battle of the campaign.
Yeah. And you've got to look at this too. Jackson's going to go up there and he's going to demand the town surrender, or the Hancock surrender. Our Union commander there, Lander, is going to say no. But
I think Ashby's the one that's sent across the river.
Yeah, they sent across. But I want you to think about this. This is 1862 early.
Yeah.
Right? Lander says no. You fast forward to the great Stonewall Jackson after the Valley Campaign, and even some of the stuff around Richmond, Second Manassas and all that. He goes to Hancock at that point in time. It's a whole different Jackson. So you would say they would probably surrender that based on his reputation at that point. But at this point, he's not to that level of reputation. And Lander's like, yeah, whatever.
Just kind of like, who's this guy?
Yeah, this guy's coming up here. He's crazy. It's winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Lander's in control of federal forces in Hancock. As Jackson moves there, and this is when he'll send Ashby across. Ashby was instructed to tell Jackson So Lander told Ashby to tell Jackson, bombed or be damned after the, after the offer was given. So bombardment takes place. It's funny. I remember an account. I think there's 2 churches right next to each other in Hancock. There's like a Catholic church and another church, and one's brown and one's red. And the Federals had 2 cannon, one in each of the churchyards. And the Confederates that were across the Potomac River on their respective heights said that one cannon was better than the other in those yards. And they said, they knew when to seek for, duck for cover or to just stay where they are, because the one, let's say, at the red church was more accurate than the one at the brown church. So whenever they saw the one at the brown church firing, they were like, okay, it's fine. So they would yell like red church, brown church whenever those cannons would go off, so they knew what to do. But it's a cool little, action that takes place there. Bombards the hell out of the town.
Yeah.
No casualties on either side, right?
No casualties.
Well, there's supposedly there's like 25 casualties.
It's a very small amount if there is.
And supposedly there's a little bit of preservation there. Back in 2010, the American Battlefield Protection Program determined that there was 415 acres of that battlefield eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, which is pretty interesting.
That's cool.
I think the American Battlefield Trust has some land up there. I don't know. I heard that. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, it's. I guess that technically wouldn't be a valley battle. Remember, we're not talking about the valley, so get that out of my head. But yeah, it goes from the 5th until I think the 6th, and the result's pretty inconclusive if I'm correct.
Yeah, there's not really
they both stayed on their side of the river and just shot shells.
I would say the Union kind of won that one because Jackson's going to end up leaving.
Yeah, so Jackson will pull back and he'll head back to the area of Unger's Store around the 7th and the 8th of January. Is this when he goes into a longer camp, correct? Is this Camp Mud?
If you want to call it a longer camp, it's probably a week.
I mean, yeah, he's stuck total. There until about the 13th, it says.
Yeah, about a week total. They call it Camp Mud.
Why is that, Elijah?
Because it was so muddy. The snow and ice and, the normal wear and tear of the soldiers, that kind of thing. Apparently it was, like, really, really bad in terms of just, like, things like wagons and horses getting stuck in the mud and everything. And they ended up relocating the camp. And apparently the relocation did nothing. It was like just as bad, if not worse. So they called that one Camp No Better.
Oh,
so
that's funny.
Sarcastically, got to have a good laugh, make the best of a bad situation. But so they were there for probably about a week in total. I know they were like in and out of that camp pretty often. But yeah, that was like a little halfway stop for them, I would say. But it's impressive to say, because you were saying January like 5th and 6th for the Hancock action. That's impressive that they made it. I mean, from Winchester up there that far, given the elements that they were facing. Because I mean, that'll definitely slow you down, and to be able to get that far on foot in just a few days is something to admire.
Yeah, and while this all was happening, so while Hancock was happening, and this is kind of like the northern side of the Panhandle, close to not Panhandle, but northern Hampshire County into Morgan County, close to the curve of the Potomac, and then if you head south of there, closer to where the area, how you would get to Romney. There's some other things going on at the same time.
So why does Jackson, and not this is the question that we'll pose to roll into what you're saying, why is Jackson moving away from Hancock? Why does he not continue to invest? Go.
Because of what happens here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Romney's obviously still the focus, which is, like I said, a little bit southwest of all this. But a Confederate outpost at Blues Gap was attacked and defeated, but the Federals will pull out of that area after the defeat. So Jackson sees he learns of this and sees this as an opportunity where he could pose a threat to Romney in the federal outpost at Romney.
Now there is that, but there's also the thought of this force is going toward Winchester.
That's true. I got that mixed
so
up.
He gets,
the threat is posed towards Winchester, not
Winchester.
Romney.
In the Hanging Rock Pass there at Blues Gap, on the 7th, 8th, Colonel Dunning's expedition will go through there and drive those Confederates out. And now Jackson's alarmed because there's an attack possibly happening on Winchester. It doesn't happen. But
in this area, that's why direction of where everything is. Like I said, Jackson and all this action around Hancock was north.
Yeah, this is directly in his rear.
So yeah, this is technically a little bit southwest of him, but in his rear, in his path back to Winchester, where his other what was it, 2,000 we said were left behind?
About 2,000.
Back in Winchester. So Jackson, he will, he'll head back to Winchester after this, correct?
He'll go back toward Winchester. I don't think he goes all the way. He goes back toward Winchester. He knows that Romney still has troops in it under Benjamin F. Kelly. But yeah, once this happens, he's going to fall back on Winchester, and kind of look for another opportunity to.
Well, he'll move against Romney at this point, right?
Yeah, he's got to get there at some point. Now, for reference to those that don't know, where is Blues Gap? Hanging Rock, all that good stuff.
It's if you take like Route 50 west and you go off some of those side roads into Hampshire County.
Yeah, so like kind of middle of nowhere to us, but of strategic importance to them back then.
Do you know, or are you asking?
A little bit of both.
Tell me why, Elijah.
I mean, it's just one of those places that's out of the way. Obviously, for Romney, the proximity to Romney, but to me personally, in the beginning, ever since I've studied the Romney campaign, to me it just seems like why Jackson would ever find Romney to be of any strategic importance is just
surrounded by mountains on all sides.
It's just weird to me. Like, what's the goal here?
Direct route into Winchester
from the west,
but it's just so far away.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's troops out there in Western Virginia,
which we know. Well, Rosecrans is out there coming.
Yeah,
he's hanging around that area.
But even still, to me personally, I just feel like you've got so many obstacles, natural obstacles to pass with the mountains and the terrain just to get from Romney to Winchester that you would have ample time to prepare if you knew that a force was moving on Winchester from Romney. I just feel like that town itself is just like, I wouldn't bother with that.
Well, I think the federal force that attacks in Blues Gap is this cavalry you said is sent out because the Federals are planning to leave Romney.
They are. Yeah.
So Jackson's kind of right where it's like they could be moving towards me.
So he will move back temporarily. He'll move toward Winchester and then continue his expedition to Romney after that.
Yeah, so Landers, Federals. So Landers in the episode pick, right, Aaron?
Yes, he is.
He's the guy, the Federal with the shoulder boards. Yes. I think that's a sketch, right?
Yes, that is a sketch.
So that's Lander. He'll pull out of Romney on the 10th of January. Yeah. And William Loring's troops will come.
One Arm
Willie in the picture will come.
Can't miss him.
Take over the town. But going back to Jackson, as he's coming back after Hancock, I'm trying to find where I had my notes. Here we go. As he's coming back from Hancock, he'll send Lander. I mean, what's his name, Aaron? One Arm Willie.
Loring.
Loring will occupy the town, and he'll. What happens to Jackson after that, though, fellas?
After what?
Loring takes command of Romney.
There's some sort of beef between Jackson and.
Yeah, is this when the beef starts, Aaron?
Oh, it started well before that.
Let's go.
So Loring is a decorated general. in the Confederate Army. He has regular Army experience. He's commanded troops. Need to remember this is really Jackson's first independent command, so to speak. So Loring's got a lot of experience, and I don't think he necessarily respects Jackson. And then in perfect Jackson fashion, Jackson doesn't tell him anything that's going on. He does not know what this campaign's about, where they're going, anything. So he's already miffed at that. He also is going to get miffed because Jackson is pressing these troops hard. Now, the Stonewall Brigade, they already know what the deal is. They're marching fast. Jackson's foot cavalry, that's what they're going to become, eventually. But they're already starting. Loring's men have not been under this kind of forced march stretch without food, shelter, all that. So much so that Loring's actually going to stop his men, and he's going to even say, "This is crazy. We're here. My men are here. No food, no shelter in the cold. What are we doing?" And that's going to anger Jackson. They're not going to get along at all. And then once Romney is occupied, Jackson will move the Stonewall Brigade back to Winchester. Mm-hmm. And Loring will be in Romney, and then the militia will be down in Bath. But Loring will be stuck in Romney in the cold, and there's nothing really there. He's going to be occupying that, while in their eyes, the Jackson's pet, the Stonewall Brigade, is taken back to Winchester in the comfort of Winchester. There's like jest and jeers between the men. The regiments of Loring, the men of Loring, are calling the Stonewall Brigade as they march out Jackson's pet, or Jackson's pets. And so they're back and forth. They don't like each other. Loring is going to get so mad that he's just going to go over the head. He doesn't talk to Joseph Johnston, who is the commander of that area, including the Manassas area. He doesn't talk to him. He goes straight to the War Department, and I believe it's Judah P. Benjamin. Mm-hmm. He goes straight to him with a letter like, "Hey, this is what's happening. I need you to order me out of here. I need you to have Jackson order me out of here. He's treating his troops special, and mine are out here with nothing." And Benjamin's going to do that, which oversteps Jackson. Jackson's going to get the order to remove, and he'll comply. Mm-hmm. Jackson is a very compliant man as far as orders. He will comply with that, and he will pull Loring away from Romney. But with that, he's going to send in his resignation, which is going to cause a whole nother issue.
He files charges for a court-martial.
Yeah.
Against Loring.
Yes.
Resigns his commission, and in a letter asks Governor John Letcher to be transferred to the position of superintendent of the Virginia Military Institute.
He wants to go back to VMI.
Yeah, he kind of blew that one out of proportion, for sure.
Yeah, Jackson's looking at this as this is an absolute big overstep of the government on his. They're not in the mountains. They don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
They don't know why he left Loring there. I can tell you why he left Loring there. Loring's men are slow. Nothing against them. Not that they're not good fighting men, but they're slow. They're not used to Jackson's way. It took them a long time to get where they were. He's got the militia in Bath. The troops he can count on is that Stonewall Brigade. They already know they're in a strategic position to be able to assist Bath or Romney, and they can do it quickly.
Yeah,
but Loring's not seeing that.
Loring's going to end up, he pulls out of Romney early February.
Yeah.
And during this, we'll have the Battle of Bloomery Gap.
Yes.
The action at Bloomery Gap, or the battle, whatever you want to call it, which is because of the evacuation. Mm-hmm. This takes place where some militia engage, and they said it was a Confederate nest of troops there in at the Bloomery Gap, and it's this small gap on a back road between Western Virginia and the
still very much that way. If you drive through, you go by Bloomery Church. Bloomery Gap Church. Yeah, it's very narrow through there, even modern day.
Yeah, it was. They occupied the area of the Gap Virginia Militia, the 67th Virginia Militia to be specific, and threatened the railroad and the Union-occupied area along the Potomac River, and wanted to drive them out. So Frederick Lander, who's the guy in our picture, the shoulder strap sketch, personally led a mixed force of infantry from Paw Paw, the area of Paw Paw, West Virginia, so Morgan County, the same county that Bath's in, and just across the river from Hancock. And this was around February 13th. This will take place, and it'll pretty heavy losses for this small little skirmish.
Yeah.
67 officers and men were taken prisoner. 2 men were wounded. Lander, who requested that he be relieved because of his ill health, reported some casualties. And another gentleman was court-martialed. So, but it's this small, narrow area, like Aaron said, where it has not changed much. Lander actually dies not too long after.
March 2nd, Lander will die of pneumonia. Now, if you think about that, Lander you look at the Union generals there. I mean, McClellan was there. He's been moved over to Washington. A little bit aggressive in the West Virginia campaign in a way. Not super much, but
yeah,
at least moved. Benjamin F. Kelly, not a terrible general, but didn't move a whole lot there in that beginning part. Was more on garrison duty. Rosecrans is up in the west. Lander, when he takes over this district, he makes movements and dispositions. He's trying to get new, guns, and he's trying to get more men and things like that. Lander dies on March 2nd. Now let's think about this. Lander continues to be successful. He lives. If he were in the valley after this, I think he's a little bit.
Ifs.
I know, but I'm just saying this guy he's a hard fighter, and I think you have it's fortunate for the Confederacy that he perishes, because I think he would have been a thorn in Jackson's side in the Shenandoah Valley.
Yeah, we'll never know.
We'll never know.
So Lander pulls out of Romney, comes back. This is where all this is going down with. They call it the Romney insurrection. This conflict, this internal conflict between Loring and Jackson. Like you said, Jackson's getting a lot of pressure from his his superiors when it comes to his resignation.
Johnston,
the
Letcher.
governor, everyone wants him to, it's like, whoa, Mr. Stonewall, let's keep you here. So he stays, but the charges were dropped against Loring, which meant, and as a result of this, all non-Virginia forces and Loring were reassigned out of the valley. Yes. And this reduced Jackson's force by about 4,000
Yeah, it gets him down to about
4,000.
Yeah, he's down to about 4,000 men at that point, which, comes into play, roughly a month later at Kernstown.
Yeah, so then as we're going from February, and this is all this goes on from early February, the end of January, early February, into the end of February. Jackson just doesn't have enough to hold. He's holding as much as he can of Winchester together, but then Banks's Federals, this detachment of the Army of the Potomac, will start moving.
Yeah, I believe it's the 5th Corps.
Up the valley, south towards Winchester. Jackson will then pull out, head south to Red Banks, just north of Mount Jackson. And it's there where we pick back up with episode 5, I think it was, which was the Kernstown one with Mike.
4.
Episode 4. So this is a good prequel to that episode. Just sets the tone for where Jackson is pre-Kernstown and how we get to the Valley Campaign. And we'll fill in the gap from episode 4 to what episode was he in with Port Republic Cross Keys? 6.
Yeah,
so
that's the end of
that gap. So we covered the end of the campaign. At some point, we'll cover the middle of like McDowell, Front Royal, First Winchester.
Give it time.
Give it time. So with the whole valley will be covered. We can tell you that. But this is a good I think this is just a really interesting campaign because we're talking about 1861 with some of this early stuff we're talking about. And then it's just early 1862 and Jackson's doing Jackson. And obviously it doesn't go successful. Jackson, the federal forces are kind of one step ahead of him in a way. Mm-hmm. I know Jackson wants to continue to head towards Cumberland, wants to advance further to Cumberland, Maryland. But you're doing a campaign in the wintertime, my guy. There's a reason campaigns and wars are stagnant.
Yeah.
And there's an off season.
The only other thing that's happening in Virginia at this time is on the border of Highland County is the Battle of Camp Allegheny in December of 1861. That is happening. So Jackson knows about that as well. That's happening just before he actually starts going into, to Romney.
61 into 62. If you want to follow like some heavy, cool fighting, not heavy in a sense of troop numbers, but
heavy movement. Just
a lot of movement, like crazy stuff where the terrain's wild. Follow what's going on in Western Virginia.
Yeah, you really don't have a lot of battle damage as far as the loss of troops from battle. Sickness, yes.
Yeah.
Freezing, yes.
Yeah.
But I personally, this is why I like to say the Valley Campaign starts as soon as Jackson gets there, because he's moving.
I mean,
his diversions are the whole time he's in command.
Yeah.
Because this is another little piece to the puzzle of why Jackson being where he is becomes important to the U.S. government, because he's not sitting idly by, and that's a big thing.
Yeah, it's a cool campaign. It's one that I was excited to talk about.
Yeah,
just because it's so close in a sense, but it's like not one that I work at or try to save. Yeah. So it's like it's cool but it ties right into the story we tell on a daily basis. So,
and how many interesting little facts come out of that 1860? You've got the Jackson Loring and the Romney insurrection, the Winter Campaign. You've got accounts of Jackson getting down off his horse, putting his shoulder into a cannon to get it around. Some of the guys talk about how they had to guide the horses around on these roads just to get them where they needed to be. I mean, how many cool things. You got Lander, who is going to have an untimely death of pneumonia. It's the antiquated weapons that they're using. It's an amazing little piece that gets overlooked so much by these big battles.
Yeah, it's a good, I don't know if you'd call it like a scrimmage for Jackson and some of these commanders to kind of get their feet wet.
It's a little preseason game.
And that's a good way to look at it, because I'm sure all these guys, especially the troops too, and the commanders, learn a lot about, what they're going to need to do come spring and summer.
This gets them going, and if you get to Romney, there's a lot of cool stuff there.
Yeah, talk about that.
There is a lot of...
There's a fort there, right?
Fort Mill Ridge, yeah. There's Fort Mill Ridge. It's still in very good condition. There's an Aaron Civil War Travels video on that. There's also the town of Romney. There's an Aaron Civil War Travels video on that. So anyway, but the town of Romney, you can go around. They actually have these signs. They're like the blue and gray signs, I think is what they're called, at different points in the town. Yeah. And, of course, you have Civil War trails there. You have the historic markers. You've got, I believe there's a monument to Jackson there at the courthouse.
I don't know if it's to Jackson. I think there's a Confederate monument.
It might just be a Confederate monument. I have to.
I think there's like one of the first Confederate cemetery markers is in the Romney Cemetery too.
It's in the Romney Cemetery.
So that's Romney, and then when you go up to Bath, there's Civil War trail signs in Bath.
Yeah.
Hancock.
Yes. And you have Fort Hancock too up there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what else did
we
talk
Revolution,
about. Well, Camp Mudd, Unger Store. Is that Camp Mudd and Unger Store the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so Camp Mudd.
We got to talk about Jackson getting drunk.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We skipped right over that.
Come on.
We'd be doing this podcast.
Oh my gosh. We went right over that. It's not bourbon, but it is whiskey, which we have whiskey. So.
Yeah. So there is a really good excerpt from the Untold Civil War, a National Geographic issue, talking about Jackson and the Romney Campaign. I guess he had some sort of illness or wasn't feeling well.
He receives a a thing that he thinks is like wine from a citizen.
So it
as a
goes
gift.
in this article that I've got here, at least, and this is just so we give proper credit where it's due. James Roberts, edited by Neil Kagan, exploring the human side of the Civil War, the untold Civil War, National Geographic. They were talking about how Jackson became drunk on the Romney campaign.
Yeah.
Of course, that's why we're here talking about it. So Hunter McGuire, Jackson's surgeon, had suggested that Jackson take a drink of some whiskey to feel better. As a stimulant, as they called it. We now know that to be a depressant. Mm-hmm. He said Jackson swallowed the liquid and made a distorted expression, so you can tell he probably doesn't like his whiskey. But McGuire says, "Isn't the whiskey good?" And Jackson answers, "Yes, very. I like it, and that's the reason why I don't drink it." And then they end up going on to say that a friend at Winchester gave Dr. McGuire a bottle of smooth but very powerful brandy before the Army left town and resumed its ordeal. Jackson called a midday halt in the march. He and his staff gathered in an abandoned log cabin and ate a meager lunch. Surgeon McGuire noticed that Jackson was shivering in the cold and pointed to the bottle of brandy that he had placed on the table. "General," he said, "you'd better take some of this. It will be good for you." And then Jackson replies, "Do you think so, sir? If you tell me I need it, then of course I will take some." So he's not, I think he's like kind of, messing with them. Just, oh, well, if you insist, then I won't say no.
Because he does like whiskey.
Yeah.
He's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they say he evidently had no idea what was in the bottle, but I mean, obviously that leaves room for interpretation. And they said, while the staff watched and wondered, the unsuspecting Jackson filled a large tumbler to the brim and drank it down without removing the glass from his lip.
Yeah, just slurps that stuff down.
That's
What a beast.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's impressive for somebody who.
And then I believe the
doesn't
rest of
drink.
it's passed around to the staff. What's left.
Jeez.
They say he resumed his meal and, as was his custom, said little. But he was probably a little toasty. So
Yeah.
he probably didn't have much to say anyhow.
Once they start riding, apparently he becomes pretty loose-tongued, except about where they're going.
Yeah.
You got to remember, at the time, the troops still don't know if they're going to Romney, Bath, Hancock. They don't know. And Jackson does not tell his staff where they're going, except he has a lot of other things to say.
Yeah.
And he opens his shirt, and because he says it's getting warm, so he opens his coat up. And, we know whiskey will make you a little warm.
That's exactly what they're talking about here. Yeah. They said he kept unbuttoning his jacket, unbuttoning his shirt, and they're like, Do you know what the weather's like? And he says, "Lieutenant, I don't think I ever noticed such a remarkable change in temperature in such a short time."
So to say Stonewall Jackson's not drunk during this particular part would be, or at least mildly intoxicated, especially with the loose tongue of telling his subordinates all kinds of stuff. And I think Henry Kidd Douglas talks about how Jackson just starts yammering away, but they still don't know where they're going.
No.
He kept that secret.
Yeah, the last thing they say on that matter was staff members watched their stern general swaying in the saddle and continuing to unbutton while wind and snow lashed the countryside. Jackson's aides could hardly suppress laughter at the sight of their Calvinistic leader undergoing what they were, for him, the strange effects of liquor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least there was some humor here.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have what you talked about with Dam Number 5, with him being up in the tree. Now we have this. There are a lot of. We always think about Jackson being that stern general and things, but there's a lot of hilarious little anecdotes that happen. Little things that happen with him.
That'd be the equivalent
throughout.
of like one of us watching one of our friends who's never drank before. Just down an entire glass and then just sit back and watch the show.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Well,
no, a good comic relief.
absolutely.
Sure. I heard too that there was like the horse's knees had icicles growing off of them.
Yes,
or something.
well, but they were icicles of blood, because what's happening is as the horses are trying to pull this artillery, well, the artillery sliding around, slamming into the horses, causing their knees to get scun up. So there's icicles of blood hanging off these poor horses. The torment to the animals during this campaign, we kind of forget that. The men, they're suffering, but these animals are suffering just as bad, if not worse, because they've got to pull all that stuff.
Yeah.
And there's several times they can't get up the hills without help.
Jeez.
Yeah, the men aren't pulling 1,000-pound pieces of artillery.
And they're pushing. I mean, there's accounts of Kassler. He's part of the Stonewall Brigade. He talks about having to push the wagons up over the hill, and you get to the top, and you're like, whew, and then you got to go down. Yeah. And it was worse going down than coming up because everything's sliding, and they're trying to literally maneuver the horses with their hands, not with the stirrups or anything like that. They're trying to keep the horses on the road, so they don't slide. And one horse would fall. There's an account of them pushing them up the hill. One horse fell, and they just kept pushing, and the horse just went with them. And then once they got to the top, another one fell, and that one got up. And it just, at some point, all 4 or all 6 horses go down. It's crazy. It's just a sheet of ice.
That was one thing that actually occurred to me. It's funny that you mentioned that. That occurred to me the other day, and you just reminded me of it. When they get up over a hill like that, all the weight behind that wagon is pushing those horses. There aren't brakes on those wagons.
Nope, there's no brakes. And the horses are not roughshod either.
How do you stop that momentum? How do you get them to slow down?
The men are holding onto the wheels of the cannons as hard as they can and trying to steer. And so you've got several men really trying their hardest to keep it on the road, but they're not roughshod either. So it's just slick.
Well, normally with I don't know about wagons, but artillery, you have the trail. That wouldn't be the trail, but that long piece from the caisson.
Yeah.
Is that long piece of wood would have the horses in between them.
Yeah.
So but it's kind of distributed in a sense, but you're still putting a lot of pressure and pull on the straps and everything that are attached to the horses.
You're on a solid sheet of ice. It's like trying to go up a hill on a solid sheet of ice in 4-wheel drive. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I can't even walk outside this past week. I'm all over the place. Yeah.
Jack doesn't have 4-wheel drive.
I do not have 4-wheel drive.
It's a pretty just again, tons of interesting little tidbits with this overlooked expedition, if you want to call it that, or campaign. Tons of interesting human interest stories there.
Well, speaking of stories, if you enjoy historical stories such as these, you can enjoy that on the History Fix platform. You can explore movies, short films, documentaries. All Battlefields and Bourbons podcast fans receive an extra 20% off their first year annual subscription. Sign up at www.historyfix.com and use promo code Battlefield. That's BATTLEFIELD, all one word. Every subscription includes a 7-day risk-free trial. So escape into history at History Fix if you'd like to listen to more stories like what we talked about today. So thank you for our friends over at History Fix for making what we do possible. Also, we forgot to tell y'all we're coming to you live from the beautiful historic Bell House in downtown Winchester, which is preserved by the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation. So if you want to support the podcast, feel free to go get yourself a History Fix subscription and become a member of the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation. We had a couple people at the turn of the 2023 and the 2024 year become members of the Battlefields Foundation and support the work that's going on here in the Shenandoah Valley. So it wouldn't be possible without you all. So we thank you so much for listening. Fellas, anything else to add before we close it off?
Go ahead. No, go ahead. No, you.
Jinx. I was just going to shout out a couple books that are really good if you want to learn about Tanner's Jackson's Shenandoah Valley Campaign book is really good.
Robert Tanner
has a very good piece on the Romney expedition. Also, William Allen,
wartime
account of going out to Romney. So, and then of course, can never remember. I think it's John Kassler, also a wartime account of.
Then I'll also throw in We Are In For It by Gary Eckelbarger. He covers a good bit of the Romney expedition, as well as Peter Cousin's book, Shenandoah 1862. Yes. Goes in really detail with some cool stories there. Elijah, anything else to add?
If you like what you heard today, just be sure to give us a follow on your listening platform, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Give us a 5-star review if you liked it. Give us an honest review if you didn't like it. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Leave reviews there if possible. And then, as always, we're happy to hear any new episode ideas that you might have, any new topics. We love hearing the feedback because that gives us kind of an idea of what you guys want to hear as well. I know we cover a lot of Valley topics and everything like that, but trust us, we do have Western theater topics.
We're going west of what we talked about today, which was pretty west for us, guys.
Like Western.
Yeah, we're going. Yeah. Don't forget, we did Pickett's Mill, guys. But
yeah, we gave you one. We gave you one. Be grateful.
Yeah, no, we'll be going west here in February and March. So stay tuned for some of those.
Yeah, no, we've definitely got some stuff out there. We'll show you guys some love as well. It's not just Shenandoah Valley, Virginia stuff. There's new stuff coming down the pike. It's just a matter of us recording them and getting them out to you guys. Yeah. But they're coming soon, so just bear with us.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.